Bort from Science today to give you a talk about adversarial emulation. Give me your full attention. Thank you.
Yay. So who's seen me speak before? Wow, and you came back. The rest of you don't know what you're in for. So your traditional InfoSec presentation is typically pretty dry. It's monotone. It's technical. It's PowerPoint. That's not how I like to play. So I prefer audience participation. Now, at the end of the day, you know, this is America, so you have your choice of how you want to participate. But if you don't participate correctly, we'll get you there. You know what I mean? See? It's easy. Ooh, nice notes. Are you really going to take notes? Of course. Cool. So it's B-R-Y-S-O-N. Anyway. All right. So fundamentally what we're going to talk about is that the challenge when we look at today's red team, when we look at pen test, is a primarily win-centric, aka ego-focused approach. Right? I get in, own domain, drop mic. Peace out, I won. Yeah, GTFO. There are children, so we're gonna keep this G-rated. I've never actually given a G-rated talk before. This is gonna be hard. That, please make eye contact to keep me like on pace. It's hard for me. All right, I get a little out there and I forget. So fundamentally, what we're going to talk about is how do we make it business-centric? How do we make it matter? How do we make it results-focused? And so my contention is that today's red team falls short of achieving this, which is why I call this adversarial emulation. The idea is that the purpose of the red team is not to do red teaming. The purpose of the red team is not to win. The purpose of the red team is how do I drive through a business-centric result? How do I understand my business with the threats that are against it? So who am I? I founded Scythe. I'm a co-founder of the ICS Village nonprofit, and I founded Grim. I'm clearly a clown, so I like to play around and have fun. I'd say the one thing I think that's pretty cool up here. So is everyone familiar with the Hack the Planet CTF that the Village brought? Yeah? So for second year in a row, our winner at DEF CON has won a black badge. So that's actually what that picture is right here. He's Israeli, so just pointing that out here at Army Cyber. An Israeli beat all of the Americans. So you all better show up next year and win that crown back. So anyway, that's him up on the closing ceremonies at DEF CON. Getting a black badge for our CTF. So, real quick, I'm not going to give you a vendor shill, but two things that are relevant here. So in 2016, a Fortune 50 who you all know and shop at came to us and said, hey, we've reached the end of the rainbow because there are two kinds of companies. And it's not the companies that have been hacked or not hacked or don't know it yet. It's the only two companies I've ever seen in cybersecurity are those where leadership takes cybersecurity seriously and those that don't. It doesn't matter how good your technical staff is, right? Like, she looks really smart, but you look smart. How about that? I'm sure you're also very talented and capable, and your organization loves that you work there. But if your boss is a moron, that's G-rated, right? This is hard for me. I'm working on it. Salty. So you will not be effective. No matter how much you try or whatever you try to do or your organization, your workflows, or whatever you're trying to do will not succeed. It's the leadership that makes security, not the technical side. That's where it starts, right? Now you need to be technically competent to actually achieve that vision, but if you do not have the leadership, then you will have what a lot of you have probably faced at some point in your life, which is working at an organization that doesn't take what you do seriously, and you get frustrated, right? And you keep being surprised that you run into the same issues over and over again. So those folks went through that, and after a few years, they had hit the end of the rainbow where they're like, hey, we've used everything on the market. We can't find any way to test our defenses further, and that's where they came to us. And that's where Scythe came from. From that, I realized that I came with this idea that I called the hypothesis on bounded attacks. And it's that we keep chasing attackers by looking at what we see, right? I am really good, and we as an industry are really good at solving yesterday. Wow, we're so smart when we look at what happened. Why can't we ever figure out tomorrow? Why can't we get to what's going to go tomorrow? Why is the threat continuing to confuse us? And the reason for this is because, like anything, we're looking too big. We're looking too broad. The whole space, hi Liz, there's a seat right here. I really didn't expect you to do that. Oh, come on, you're embarrassing with me. Thank you. So the funny part of that bit, actually, was, who was at B-Sides Las Vegas? So if you saw the picture of the lady shooting the unicorn, I'm the unicorn, that's the lady who's shooting the unicorn. We had a panel, and I was late to our panel. Like, I'm a speaker, and I was several minutes late to it. So she reminded me of that earlier, which is why she was so kind to play ball, showing up late to my talk. So back on the bounded attack space. Does anybody in here know how to measure security? Seriously, like measure security. It's a trick question. It is a trap, yes. Nobody can measure security. We have no way to measure security. I have no way to quantify or empirically measure security. I can look in a lab and say, hey, I've seen these things, and if I run these things in the lab, then I get that test. But what does that do in the real world? We keep getting surprised by whatever happens tomorrow. Again, we solve yesterday to get to tomorrow. We never figure it out ahead because we have no way to measure security. And so when I was looking at this, I was like, well, let's take access off the plate. So exploitation is actually mathematically infinite, is my first statement. There are so many possible combinations, which is why vulnerabilities and exploits continue to happen. And oh, by the way, that's just technical access. Do I need exploitation to get on your computer? What's another option, Ben? Humans, people. People who stick their passwords on Post-it notes. That's not technical. That's just Scott being Scott. So let's take access off the table, and let's figure out we can constrain it then at post-exploitation. Because here's the other thing. Once I gained access to your computer, have I done anything yet? I got shell. I'm bathed in green light, a black background. Have I done anything yet? Nothing. I haven't done anything yet. I'm there, but I have not accomplished a single thing you actually care about yet. You don't like that I'm there, but it's the same thing as like the burglar coming up and picking the lock to your house. They haven't stolen anything yet. Nothing has happened. So, was that enthusiasm? I'm like a Disney character. No? It's all right. Your dad's not following either. So once I gain access, I can constrain it across two vectors. One, because this goes to this other question I'd always had in my mind, is why is this the only discipline in the world that I know of where somebody else seems to know my own space better than I do? That doesn't seem fair. Communications, that's not true. The defense, the organization chooses how you communicate, right? You don't get to show up and bring something else to the table. We have a certain number of communication protocols. One, those are the only things we allow in the environment. And two, pattern of life. As an attacker, I have to blend in with what's there. So I can only talk with the way things are already being used in that environment. I have to blend in with that. So how many different communication protocols are there in the world? There aren't that many, are there? Right? Like fingers and toes number. It's finite. It's a limited number. And then if we look at the capabilities, what do attackers do? What are the behaviors that they do? That's also constrained. There's only a certain number of things that they do and where they do them. And so if we can find a way to combine, here are the ways that I can talk over, these are the things I can do, we've now created the ability to measure security because we can replicate the entire attack space because it's now bounded enough for us to be a metric that survives to tomorrow. This is this whole hypothesis I've been working on for 2 years with research, and it bounds a lot of the different ideas and the things that I talk about. So, all right. So I gave part of the answer here. What is the value of post-exploitation? You made eye contact. Oh, he was panicking.
Seeing what you can do next.
Seeing what you can do next. What does that mean, seeing what you can do next?
To be proactive in your estate and your environment, to define the first question you posed to us with, the future instead of the past.
The future instead of the past. Okay. Oh, now you want me to come back. All right. Wait, sir. Is it the pose? Was it the pose that did it for you? This is what you want? Sorry, we actually do need it in the microphones for the recordings.
The market cap of your company if you're a commercial company.
So, business, right? Business value, business context, business risk. This is where CVSS falls flat. This is where our industry falls flat because we get a bunch of nerds going to the business or going to the mission and going like, oh, nerd things, and the business goes, who let him in the room? Right? It needs to be in a business context. And what's the largest surface area in any business, in any organization, any mission? Largest surface area, guaranteed. Who said that? You? Oh, you're cool. Coming back. Is that? I need another pose. Hey, I didn't make creepy eye contact when I did it. That's the line with sexual harassment. People. Users. There you go. Users. People are the largest surface area of any organization, right? We talked about this earlier when we talked about the limitations of exploitation. We talked about the limits of technical. People have to be, one, a part of the equation. They are the largest factor in your risk. How they use your computers. Have any of you, and this is off the record, no, seriously, how many of you have circumvented defensive controls to get your job done? Right? Don't worry, I'm not going to challenge your SF-86. People use computers to do their jobs. They will do whatever they need to do as best as they understand it, because not all of them are technical wunderkind like this electric group. Most of them are not that technical. He's not that technical. That's why he was late. So the point here is the value in the post-exploitation space is I'm truly understanding the contours in a business context for understanding that business value because I'm bringing people into it. Gabe the engineer, he's a person.
Yeah, he's speaking later.
Oh, fancy.
We're
Okay,
coordinating.
we'll drop by after this. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to ditch your talk early. I'm actually going to wait till you're done.
So red team versus adversary emulation. So we talked at the very beginning when I explained that, and this is mostly for you because you were late, so I just want to catch you up to speed, is we are moving from the way today's red team works, which is primarily a surgical, win-focused project, to where could we make it more business-centric? Where can we get actually a results-focused process out of it? So we'll start with some definitions so we're all clear, right? All the way on one hand, from vulnerability scanning to assessment to penetration testing. That's where a lot of folks think about this stuff. That's the access question. That's where I'm looking at system hardening. That's where I'm looking at how do I get into this application, this system, to a next step, which is a red team. And then I'm setting up a friend of mine who I'll call out later. He's not actually here in this room, or else I'd be picking on him more. Then is this concept of the continuous purple team. So purple team, has everyone heard of purple teams? Has anyone seen a purple team? You have? Once or twice? I'm going to pick on him first. A minute or two? A minute or two?
Never lasts.
Did they like throw you out of the room?
Or off the engagement? Yeah. Get back to
You got thrown off the engagement? Oh. So back to that leadership problem. All right, you said you've seen it more than a minute or two, though. You've seen it once or twice. Okay, talk into my chest.
Oh, I can't use the mic.
I don't think those work. They don't work. Nope, they don't. Well done. You get to talk in the mic. None of the rest of you do. None of your mics work. Okay, so you've seen a purple team. What'd you see?
So we would have a weekly purple exercise where we would bring in members of the quote-unquote fancy red team. I don't know the word there. And the blue team guys and girls and people. They would get together and they would launch an attack and they would show where their weaknesses were. They even bring in people that were part of that application that they were attacking and defending. And bring those business leaders into the room and show them, here is your app. It's about to get owned, and these people are going to try their best to defend it, and this is why they need you to do your job appropriately and do basic security steps that you get taught every single year. And 99% of the time they would fail and we would find something on them, probably would break it within the first 10 minutes. But it was very educational for those people, and then they would go off and they would repeat their mistakes over and over and over again, and it continuously happened.
So you were saying they were there, but they didn't learn anything.
I didn't say that. Did I?
Show of hands, yes, you did. No, and that's one of the frustrating things from the technical side of this, right? Like, who's done pen testing here? Who's come back and seen the same thing the next year you run the pen test, and the year after you run the pen test, right? Why does that happen? So we go back to the leadership assertion. You had something? You definitely don't have a microphone. You have to talk into my chest. You think I'm kidding. You were late, so you missed that. No, sit down. No, I mean,
So basically what I found that when I do assessments in pen testing is that when the company you're doing it against, they don't really understand the vulnerability that you're showing them. They don't know how to prep for them. So what I found that if you got an attack or vulnerability, if you're able to translate that and say, this is what I can do with it, and this is how I can pull your data and demonstrate it that it could happen to him, then they're more likely to take precautions. But they're always going to prioritize. The cheapest solution is always going to be the best solution for them. So if you can kind of also prioritize what they need to do, then that helps them, and then the cheapest way to do it.
so when we're speaking to them, we have to speak to them in their language, right? They hire nerds for a reason because we have the technical depth to understand what this is and what this requires. But we have to tie it back into the business that we can bring into the room. So when we tie that back into like an operational workflow, purple team is I have an offensive assessment, an adversarial emulation, a red team that's connected in with the business that's tied into blue team workflow and operations, right? That's a full piece where defense becomes a part of the assessment, and it's shared. So, lots of words. Okay, so red team attributes, what we see mostly today, I mean, can you all read those? Yeah, you don't need me to read those. I mean, I'll do it funnier than you, but you can still do it quicker in your head. Anything you would dispute up there? Don't be afraid. Or do. I mean, either way, but say something. You're affiliated with a prestigious university, RIT. What do you think? It's accurate? Everyone else agree? Okay. Adversarial, damn it. Sorry. Darn it. Shoot. Shucks. Oh, gee golly, gosh. Sorry, this is my OCI. That was a joke. Jeez, come on. Some of the jokes are subtle. All right. So what is adversary emulation? One, it needs to be customizable. I have to be able to change my command and control. I have to be able to change what kind of actions I can put on objective. If you go back to my original hypothesis around the bounded attack space, right? I'm working across two vectors of how do I change my communications and how do I change what I'm doing, what behaviors I'm emulating, what TTPs do I want to do. It needs to be repeatable, right? One, I need to be able to repeat this exactly so that I can use that as a specific metric to understand how things have improved or not. The other advantage of it being repeatable is it makes it much easier for that purple team goal where now I have something I can easily recreate back on when the blue team or DevOps is looking at remediation or building something else. This is now something they can bring in as a part of their test matrix. Kill chain insight. Going back to the fact that we don't want our red team to just focus on winning, we want them to understand the contours and the choke points of our business. You don't need to solve everything through technical solutions, right? If I determine that, let's say I have whitelisting in my environment. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to create an adversary that tries to come in and run an XE. And it's not whitelisted, so I validate that control. That whitelist works. That payload did not succeed. Does that mean I should just stop? Or what if I then go, okay, we have validated that whitelisting works throughout our environment. Now let's whitelist it and see what happens next. Let's go further down the kill chain with understanding what that adversary might do. Because this is the point of where we're trying to emulate an adversary. Nobody in here has enough budget or time or resource to truly put together a full nation-state capability. You don't. That's why we're trying to emulate it. We need to understand the specific points that are relevant and find the cheapest economics to emulating them in our environment to understand them. We don't have to do exactly what they do to do that, right? I don't need to defeat whitelisting. I just need to validate it to a point and then defeat it by whitelisting. Does that make sense? And then automatable. All right, so white box versus black box. This follows the same concept. When I talk to clients, I tell them that most folks like the black box pen test. Like, you don't know anything, and just like, see what you can do. And it's like, why, right? Going back to, do you really expect me to bring nation-state level of capabilities within a 2-week time frame? You laugh, but that's the industry expectation. That's how most people think. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, but they do. I don't know why, but they do. So where I say is like, again, let's cut to the chase. Give us all of the information, because at the end of the day, a determined adversary will get that information. That's what you really want to understand. Your pretended opacity is not true. And you having me do a 2-week assessment that gets stuck on that doesn't prove anything. So, white box versus black box. Defense validation. Talked about a lot of these. This part we sort of cut a little bit. So executives, this is where we start tying it from, all right, this is an interesting concept, Bryson. Let's really take it to what's the business case. The start of the business case, again, is one, if I can really do emulation of adversary, and again, there's a lot of shortcuts that make that easier to do that, which we just discussed. So if I can find something that's economical, repeatable, and scalable, I can now validate the security spend. How many people think that's what a CISO actually does today? What do CISOs do today? Get fired? Well, that's why they're on 2-year turnover. They tend to quit before they get fired. It's like they're just smart enough. It's like, all right, the con's almost up. Time to go to the next town. What's that? The 3 envelope story. I don't know the 3 envelope story.
But from memory, so new CEO comes in and Bill says, okay, so here's the advice that I can give you, and then you're on your own. And he gives you 3 envelopes, and he says, each time you hit a crisis, open an envelope. Opens the first envelope because things have gotten bad after a few months, and he's like, announce a reorg. All right, that buys you at least another year while everybody tries to figure out what the heck's going on. I forget what the second envelope was. I think it was something like pivot product strategy or something. Rename everything.
Change the names.
Yeah, change the name. Third envelope, buy 3 envelopes.
So my joke on this is that, like, literally being a CISO is just being a great con man. Prove me wrong. I mean, first of all, who in here actually knows everything about security? What, none of us? Nobody does. That's the problem. None of us are actually experts. We know, like, slivers really well, but nobody is a whole expert because this whole space has been unconstrained. It's impossible. So the CISO is in charge of all of that. What else are they supposed to do? Whatever Gartner tells them and whatever their peers are buying. Done. You go, oh, but that's the game. That's it. That's all we got. At least I'm the same as everybody else. That's the best I can do. That's where we get into the value versus snake oil. Since the threat is, in fact, the threat, that's what we're worried about. Maybe we can now start to get to what really works for us, right? That's your interest in adversarial emulation, where we can take red teaming beyond where it is today. And then, of course, the people side. Who works for an MSSP in here? Thank you for being brave. You did?
Okay, go to him.
No, you're current. Why would I talk to old news? You're new news. Yeah, he like shrinks away. I'm just coming over to you just for that. Hey, I'm Bryson.
Nice to meet you, I'm Carl.
Carl, nice to meet you. You really like ran away.
Considering he's married to me, that's probably half the reason.
Oh, like I'm not, like, that's my wife. Like, what? How long have you been married? 7 years?
It's 8, asshole.
Okay, well, we were talking about adversarial emulation. Like, this was not the time to do it in real life.
I'm an APT.
No, he's clearly APT. He's in here screwing things up. 8 years. Eight years of wedded bliss, right? This way, your enthusiasm, yes? There you go. So you work at an MSSP. It's been good for your marriage. You can't script these things, right? This is real life. That's what I'm talking about, the people component. You need to just set it free. This is post-exploitation. Do you have children?
One.
Post-exploitation. See, I can do the G-rated humor. It's like Disney where there's a subtle context. It's clear the adults are going to get it. The kids are just like, Simba. Okay, so how confident are you as an MSSP that you really are on top of everything that's going on in your customer environment?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because it's the customer.
It's because it's the customer.
Yep.
People, again.
Well, the clients aren't aware of And then they stick their fingers in their ears and they go, la, 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 la. And they don't want to be aware. They don't want to fix those issues because usually they're blinded by, well, in the past we did it this way. We don't want to fix it. Running domain admin accounts, and you're like, hey man, like, maybe you shouldn't do that. And they're like, no, we're good. We used to do it this way, so we're safe. You're like, maybe domain admin is not something you should be doing. No, like we said, we're good. And it's difficult to get them to change. And even if we do know the vulnerabilities they're facing, we won't know all of them, not until they pop up sometimes.
What's your ability to put those vulnerabilities you are aware of into their business context? Like, again, you know, a server being exposed could mean a lot of different things, right? Like, one might contain everyone's social security numbers. The other one might be just, you know, the Eventbrite registration for tonight's awesome barbecue at 6:30 p.m. That was a plug. That was a shameless plug. There is, in fact, a barbecue, free barbecue tonight, 7:30. Scott, who was over here earlier, is making 50 pounds of smoked meat, personally, like personal handmade barbecue, homemade barbecue. Oh, handmade. I'm not. Again, children, staying away from hand and meat jokes.
You did that, not me. But I mean, putting it in a business context is always easier than making them still want to move, because you can sit there and go to a layman's term and say, hey, you know, if this is a vulnerability, if this gets exploited, this is what's going to happen. And you can understand, I'm like, okay, well, all of our information is going to be just exposed. You know, oh, well, if we lose, you know, control of this, it can infect the entire network. We will no longer be able to, you know, use our computers. We've got to run off backup. It's going to take us time to, you know, recuperate. You know, and that loses business. You can say that translates into money. And that's what they understand.
So I see you circled something else for this time period.
Yeah, I know. I got swindled. I don't know who you are, but that was.
I am not Paul Jeremio or Adam Swanda.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've been bamboozled.
Well, how do you feel about that now?
Oh, you're really funny.
Okay.
But I don't.
That's all you got to do is tell a man he's funny, and we're good. What was that? No, you got to take pot shots over the microphone, sir. No, not that microphone. That's convenient. It's like he's over here playing on his phone. What's going on? You sure? Oh, you have a lovely family. Hi. What were you going to say?
I asked her if he was also supposed to be in bootstrapping seat today.
Oh, okay. Oh, are you also
Yeah.
one of those just caught in the crossfire here?
Yeah.
And now you're here.
Yeah, now I'm
How do you feel?
Good so far.
Good so far. We'll see if we can correct that. What? Too fast? Who said what? At 15 minutes? Really? Have I been talking that much? All right, threat intelligence today. 1, it's driven by static identifiers. Everyone's seen the pyramid of pain before, correct? What is the pyramid of pain summarized in 2 sentences? Golf clap, golf clap, golf clap. Yes. Starting with trivial, easy, simple, annoying, not really. CTI mostly is the bottom 3, right? Again, I figured out yesterday. What is yesterday? Well, yesterday is, here's this hash coming from this IP address tied to this domain. What do you think it's going to be tomorrow? Something else. Done. Game over. That's the challenge with today's cyber threat intelligence, is these things change, and how do you consume like real threat intelligence? If I'm going beyond that, and I'm going up the pyramid of pain, where do I get those really cool, tough TTPs in the red? Research. 40-page reports. That's how you get it today. Here is a 40-page report. Operationalize it. It's not machine readable. There's no way for me to ingest that stuff. I'm actually submitting a talk to MITRE AttackCon where I'm going to attack the whole CTI industry for the entire talk. It's going to be good. My career has been just fantastic. I have a shorter time life than a CISO. All right, analyst reports, this is what we're talking about. You have to read them. They're lengthy. What do you actually do with that? Neutered malware. Has anybody ever worked with neutered malware? You know what that is? Yes, you have? Jack? What? Are you really inviting me back up with the microphone? Well, we're all jocks, so nerd. Even she thinks I'm funny. Yeah. Bad software, malware, found in the wild. We take out its dangerous components and then we play with that, right? That is like real adversarial emulation, right? Because I'm taking a real thing and I'm going to play with it. But it's costly and it's difficult. It's resource intensive, right? I have to reverse engineer it. I have to take it apart. I have to recode it. I have to then feel confident I've done that well enough where I haven't just shot myself in the foot. And there's also the potential risk that the defense gets focused on the signature aspects of that neutered malware versus the behavioral components of what that malware is doing. So this is a talk that's going on right now well, I don't know about right now because West Coast time, but today at B-Side Sacramento. Who knows what Impash is? I haven't picked on him. See, you are smart. You just don't, the confidence, like, I am, gosh darn it, I'm smart, I'm good, I'm great at this stuff. No, you got to repeat it.
I'm great.
You're great, there you go. Good enough. I do. See, you're late. This is why you don't know this is what I do. This is the shtick.
So import hash will be the import table hash for a PE binary on Windows.
Yes. Super nerdy response that, how many people in the room actually got that? You're right. You're absolutely right. It was a concise, no, that was, you are right. I just, unfortunately, look at what we're dealing with. Look around the room, man.
Everybody looks smart to me.
Here, hold on. I'll go back a few slides. There we go. See this?
They don't let me talk to C-suites.
So, anybody else want to take another shot at that in layman terms? I thought you raised your hands. Oh, okay. What it is it's one of the primary ways that I ingest malware. I turn it into a hash, right? This is its fingerprint. So I know that fingerprint, every time I see it, is that bad thing, and cut it out of the environment. So we just talked about the downsides of that, and we can throw stone at the weakness of that approach, but it is kind of a fundamental building block of defense, isn't it? Well, what if it was flawed? Yeah, so we put together, we did research, we found a way where you can have the same thing have multiple fingerprints. So it doesn't even have to be polymorphic to break the hash that underpins a lot of how defense is done. And there's a link to the paper. So this is threat intelligence from an emulation perspective. I'm giving credit. The specific content is not from Katie, but this approach of highlighting this kind of thing did come from Katie Nichols at MITRE. For those of you who have not seen my DerbyCon talk, she's the one who, when I asked what's the difference between emulation and simulation, gave like just drop mic answer, which I was not expecting. So she's a really smart lady. So threat intelligence, right, here is where I take specifics of a threat actor and I start breaking them down. In this case, I'm using MITRE ATT&CK. Who hates MITRE ATT&CK? Who doesn't like MITRE ATT&CK? I don't work for MITRE. I don't. In fact, they complained to me when I did not properly show Caldera at DerbyCon. It doesn't take what? As or PaaS. So software as a service, platform as a service. The fact that it doesn't have that, what is the...
It doesn't take cloud into effect, and that's becoming a major component of most organizations nowadays.
Okay. What it does do well is it is the first periodic table that we've had to combining elements for understanding attacks, right? It is still fleshing out, but before this, we had no common vernacular on how to say this is what a bad person does. Now we do. And here's how we would do something like that, right? I can look at this, go, this payload was an auto IT. All right, well, auto IT is S0109 that retrieved and executed PowerShell. PowerShell is a particular technique. From that domain, well, there's the IP address. I can see, so we start to pull this, and we now have what, if we call attack a periodic table, I've now developed a chemical equation from that periodic table to describe a particular attack. So this is where I recommend using attack, not to get focused on where I think it breaks down more than the gaps that it has, is the way that industry has responded to it has been like, okay, I now have a checklist to go against, right? Show me I'm good against PowerShell. It doesn't work that way, but that's how business is trying to use it today. But from an emulation perspective, this is my way of describing a chemical compound, AKA a particular adversary, what they can do and how they do it. So pre-attack, enterprise attack, whole bunch of attack. This is the latest edition. So this is from Blake Strom, who is actually, his nickname is Mr. Attack. So he is the lead over attack. They've created now sub-TTPs. So you can go even further down the matrix of understanding, like, well, here's high level, like PowerShell, and they're now trying to actually bring out all the subcomponents of that. So this is a living, breathing thing. MITRE is very open to criticism. They actually are. So if there's things you don't like or do like, that's Blake. I'll give you his personal cell phone number. Is that facing this way? I can't tell. Blake, I hope you're watching this. So these are the good things. These are the bad things. Open source options. So this is something, when I first came up with the idea of this talk, and I'll be blunt, right? Always acknowledge your mistakes when you, kids are still in the room, mess up. When I gave this talk at DerbyCon, I wanted to give a much more detailed component of using open source tools to then show you technically how to conduct adversarial emulation across particular vectors. Turns out that was a bigger project than I imagined. So what we have done is this is a collaborative project that a few of us are working on where we are tracking 24 tools, 19 of which are open source. Those are the ones we're actually going to consider in scope. And by November, we are going to release a high-level summary matrix of all of them. Like what kinds of things they can do across all of that. And then after that, the way this project is going to morph is then where I talked about how to do specific adversaries and emulate them. We're gonna be publishing that for each of those frameworks. So like we'll take APT3 and we'll try it with all 19, and we'll show the pros and cons of like trying to emulate with each one of those open source frameworks. So this is just an open source project that we've been working on for a couple of months, and we hope to have the initial matrix completed by November. So essentially all of the real depth of what I'm talking about philosophically here, we will share out. So these next few slides, which we're going to kind of skip through, are fundamentally, when we're looking at adversarial emulation, the two elements that we need to look at are host behaviors and network behaviors, right? What can I do on a host? What is visible on a network? How long is the average dwell time of an attacker before they're discovered? It's a lot, right? The number goes up every year. I think it's 300 days right now. I think I've seen it 200 days in the past. Why is that the case? Because where are most of your eyes? They're on your hosts. They're on your boxes. As an attacker, a real attacker, that's just their test matrix. That's where you try to see me on a box where we're both operating, I'm going to beat you every time. But I cannot defeat the laws of physics. The laws of physics are everything that leaves that box goes down to layer 1, ones and zeros. I can't do anything special about ones and zeros, right? It's not like I'm like, well, I'm twos. No, I'm ones and zeros just like the rest of you. Now you have to find me in that soup of ones and zeros, but I can't hide from you. right? I can't prevent you from ever knowing I'm there because I can't defeat the laws of physics. My buddy Jorge, he teaches a class at SANS. Right now, this is a 2-day class on purple teaming. He also does one on adversarial emulation. Brand new class. I think their first, when I put this together, was before he even taught it in September. It's October. And they're looking at putting together a 5 or 6-day class on full purple teaming and adversarial emulation. So I usually don't like throwing a lot at SANS, but Jorge's a good guy, and this is one of the cutting edge pieces of somebody really trying to put a lot of in this, as opposed to, being told at 10:30 last night you're giving a talk at B-Sides Augusta. That's why you had that other thing circled, and why my name is taped up there. I was a last minute ad. I can't read either. Questions? What's going to wake up businesses? What's the purpose of business? What does that have to do with computer security? What's the largest budget in any business? The budget to run the business, to do the business. Marketing, sales, operations. Largest budget. Every business ever, right? We created this company to make the best cookies of all time. This computer stuff is just what I need to do to scale to be a modern business. So now, all right, so a fraction of my operational budget was very spirited. Was it interesting? Excellent. The IT budget is a fraction of that business budget. Security is a fraction of the IT budget. Those relationships will never change, ever. Stuff like this is a niche inside IT security. So if that is always the way things are, then we have to work within the context of just like, let's make it a little bit better, incrementalism. I got into an argument a few weeks ago where someone, actually with a straight face, and this is somebody who I think is smart, said, in 10 years, this problem will be solved. I was like, yeah, I asked if I could take what he was taking, but I didn't get a good answer to it. Any other questions? Then I bid you adieu.